I want to call to order the Finance Committee meeting for Wednesday, July 27, 2022. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Lear?
Present.
Mr. Swanson? Mr. Hess? Present. Ms. Polk? Ms. Weber? Present. Ms. Parker? Present. Mr. Fairfield? Present. Mr. Eckhoff? Mr. Featherling? Present. Mr. Dunnell? Mr. Miller? Present. Mr. Long? Present. Mr. Hunter? Present. Mr. Raymond? Present. Mr. Wheeler? Present. Mr. Seroy? We have a quorum.
All right. Is there any request for public comment? I've received no request. Any request for public comment? If not, I would entertain a motion to move other business professional services proposal for Aroma Park boat launch drag design to the top of the agenda, as the gentleman is on Zoom, and it would be a courtesy to him. Is there a motion to Mr. Miller, Ms. Parker? All in favor of the motion to adjust the agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right. Mr. Chairman Wheeler, could you introduce the gentleman?
Yes. Basically, what you have in front of you today is the agreement between us and Christopher Burke Engineering for a scope of services that lays out costs associated with really engineering, if you will, the entire dredging of the area around the Aroma Park boat launch. That project, obviously, we've talked about, we've approved moving forward to this step. Now you see what it would cost. By the way, we have any number of ways to allocate this. If we want to do general fund, if we want to use Arpa dollars, for this, or we can include it in the grant, the $1 million grant, or excuse me, it's an appropriation that is processed as a grant from the state of Illinois. So really, we have some options on how we want to move forward on funding this, many of them, but you kind of see exactly what we're looking at in terms of the project and now it's the scope of services is that we have in front of us. So with that, we have Charlie, you're on today. Are you just by yourself, or is there anybody else coming on?
I believe it's just myself. Okay,
please go ahead and introduce yourself, if you would, to the group, please, and tell a little bit about what you do there. Christopher Burke.
Sure. My name's Charlie Deweese. I work as a consultant engineer, environmental engineer for Christopher Burke Engineering, and we had a part in forming a plan for the Kankakee River that introduced a number of flood control and sediment improvement measures. It was a work plan for the Kankakee River Yellow River Basin Commission, and as part of that, one of the projects was the improvement of the Aroma Park boat launch, which, as you all are familiar, that portion of the river has become sedimented in and can no longer service boat traffic. So we've put together a proposal for engineering services to have that area surveyed, and then to do a set of construction design plans that would entail a scope of removing all of the sand sediment that is in that area. And we've just been assisting Mr. Wheeler with getting that proposal together and getting some estimates together.
And so the group knows Christopher Burke has been really at the center of the evolution of the old Kankakee River Basin Development Commission into this new governmental unit that has been created by the Indiana legislature that I'm fortunate to be part of. And it wouldn't have made a lot of sense to go out and hire another engineering firm, professional services, if you will, because they are so ingrained and knowledgeable, and they've already been looking at our side of the river. It would actually probably cost us quite a bit more to bring somebody new in, and because they'd have to relearn everything, and that wasn't necessarily what we wanted to do here. So the proposal you see in front of you, we could have done an RFQ, and at some time, and I'm sure part of this will be, doing an RFP from engineering firms to do the work, not engineering, but the construction and dredging firms to do the work. So we will be bidding out the work itself, but this part about it falls under professional services. I just want you to understand my logic on why not to bring 6 or 7 rope and pony shows in here that would have to relearn everything that these guys already know. So,
Is there a motion to approve this proposal? Mr. Feathering, Mr. Long seconds. Discussion, Mr. Hunter, just a minute.
Bones, you see why, you know, it was appropriate for him to give some explanation before the action was taken. So that's, yeah, a second.
All right, we have a motion before us. Is there discussion on the motion? You've heard some of the background. Any questions?
Charlie, do you want to run us through at least a little bit of, like, if you were to just say the high-level process that we're going to be going through here, just to let the committee know, and this is going out to the community, to the millions of local residents here in Kankakee County. So,
Sure. I assume you're wanting just an overview. What we propose to do is we have a company that does sonar and bathymetric data gathering. We will go out to the area of the boat launch. We will basically set the extents of where the sediment is, and then the bathymetric data will be gathered. We should get survey back, I would say, within a few months. And then this fall, we can put together a construction set that would go through any permitting process. And then we will have a set of construction plans that we will bid out with the county. And it would be a dredge construction company that would come in, and usually the process would be a couple months long, maybe 3 to 4 months at most, to get the sediment out of there. It's possible this could be a project for the spring of 2023.
at what stage does the permitting come in, and what do you guys are assisting and leading that part of this, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So we have to survey the extent of the removal area. Once we have the removal area marked on a plan set, that can then be sent into the permit agencies. I would estimate it could be in September we could get the process going for permitting. Typically, I like to advise any clients that a permitting process with either Army Corps or state agencies like the Illinois Department of Natural Resources would typically take 60 to 90 days. I like to leave 90 days on the table. So, assuming we get it optimistically in September, then September, October, November, you would have approval in November. Personally, I would say it's going to be quite a stretch to have a actual dredge operation at the end of this 2022 year. I think it's much more realistic that you get your permits in hand and your construction set finished by the end of this year, let's say November, and then you can bid it during the winter time, and you could potentially award and then mobilize a contractor to begin dredge operations at the end of the winter period of 23.
Mr. Hunter, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Chairman Wheeler, can you refresh my memory, or our memories regarding the amount that Senator Joyce acquired for us regarding the river?
There's two separate ones. There's $1 million that can be used for dredging. Then there's $7 million we received, or gonna receive, should I say, for infrastructure that cannot be dredging. It has to be bondable projects. So that there is a big difference between the two.
Yeah, I was wondering about. I thought it was $8 million, but I wasn't sure about the breakout.
Yep.
But thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Weber.
I was wondering if the numbers on page 91 of $376,836.84 is what we're asking to approve.
Let me find that again. What was it?
It's is that what it is that we're talking about?
My understanding is the estimated fee for completing the project shall not exceed $60,000.
Oh, okay.
That's including reimbursable expenses.
Okay.
It's possible you may be looking at the actual construction estimate cost for the basically construction dredge removal, which we can something we can do early on the project. As soon as we have our quantities for the dredge removal area, we can advance a high level cost estimate to the county so that you have a good idea of what that construction dredge removal will cost you.
Okay. Mr. Long.
Yes.
Just a minute. Yes, Mr. Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Charlie, could you give us a short explanation of the bathymetrics? We're discussing this at GIS and identified that as an important next step in GIS. Could you maybe give us a little rundown on how that works?
Yeah, sure. So bathymetric data basically is a sonar reflective type of technology. You have equipment that floats on the surface of the river, and then it does soundings which reflect off of the bottom of the river. And essentially that will tell you the depth of your water depth and then your sediment depth. So we can tell essentially how deep the river is across the area of the boat launch. And if we need a design depth of, let's say, I'm just making it up, but 5 to 6 feet to support both boat traffic, and we have only 2 feet of standing water in that area, then obviously we'd have to remove about 4 feet of sediment. So that's what the sonar or the bathymetric tells us. It's basically a scan of the river bottom, and then we use that to come up with the quantities of sediment removal.
Thank you.
Are there other questions or comments? Are we ready for a vote? This is spending money, so I'll call for a roll call vote.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Mr. Hess, Ms. Weber, Ms. Parker, Mr. Fairfield, Mr. Featherling, Mr. Miller, Mr. Long, Mr. Hunter, Mr. Raymond, Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much for giving us. We're going to move on our agenda then. Probably there's no need for you to stay unless you want to.
Thank you for your time.
We'll move to presentations. Michael Lynch from Medical Insurance for the yearly review. Is he here? He's not here at this point. Anita, is there anything you want to provide us with? Not at this point, all right. If he's not here, we'll move on then. You've received the minutes from the June 29th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Mr. Parker, Mr. Hunter, any questions, comments? If none, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Finance Department, Mr. McCarty. Mr. McCarty's on Zoom. We start with miscellaneous financial reports that are in the packet, been available to you. First thing always, of course, is here. Where are we?
Yeah. Mr. Lear, if anybody has questions, I can answer any questions. Everything's pretty straightforward, this month with most of these reports, but certainly we can discuss anything if any members want to.
All right, so you've got the revenue reports, sales tax, income tax, use tax, general fund, personal property replacement tax, inmate detainee bed rental revenue. And you've also got the cash flow analysis. Are there any questions on that? You've had a chance to review it. If there are questions, this is the time. If not, we'll move on. Seeing no questions, we have several items that have come from the auditor's office. The first item is in terms of professional services, in terms of a state grant that we're going to get reimbursed on, dealing with the courthouse. The second one is mileage reimbursement for one of the judges attending a conference as they deal with preparing for the transition in terms of the software. And we have one from the Sheriff's Department that was the auditor asked us to approve, dealing with the NAACP meeting. Are there questions on any of those items? Mr. Feathering?
I don't want to ask a stupid question or say anything stupid, but you're bouncing around on the agenda, and it's hard to keep up on these. Tablets are nice. I used to carry paper. I can fold over, but now you're jumping around, and I don't know what pages you're on.
Okay, well, I'll go a little slower then. I understand, yeah.
Say page 42 or 52 or whatever, that way we got a better idea.
Right after the cash flow analysis, if you find that first few pages.
It's got a page number on it, Steve?
No,
should
they
have
don't
an
have
upper
page
left.
numbers.
Should be in the upper left on that. I'm on 18. Okay, all the way back there. Okay. Sorry.
I appreciate that. I need to know that when.
Yeah.
Mr. Long, did you have?
No.
All right, so the first item is an item that was a bright architecture. Is the billing, the vendor on this particular claim. If you can find that one. And then right after that, Judge Slowinski is the vendor as he traveled to a meeting dealing with the transition in software. So the auditor had a question on why a judge should want to travel to go to a meeting, and why we should reimburse him when he travels to go to a meeting. All of the documentation is in here in terms of the expenses that the judge incurred at that meeting. And then the third one is the vendor's country table. You received that separately because that was a late submission.
I think we have that in the pads.
It's on a separate.
It's on a separate sheet. It'd probably be at the very end of your scroll. Mr. Hess.
I make a motion, we combine these three and approve them.
All right. Mr. Long seconds that. Any discussion on combining and approving?
Yes, there is.
Yes. Mr. Hunter.
Mr. Chairman, I've never seen an inquiry such as this. I'm speaking specifically to the NAACP request. Nature of a meeting, list of attendees. I've never seen anything like this presented before this particular august board. And I'm appalled at the inquiry regarding who was there and the nature of the meeting. The NAACP is the oldest and longest serving civil rights organization in this country. And I'm personally offended by the nature of the inquiry. Additionally, regarding the request of the judge for reimbursement, you would think that was appropriate in terms of ascertaining the dynamics associated with the scope of that particular visit. So I'm going to vote yes for these matters, and as I indicated, I'm personally offended by the inquiries.
Well, clearly, in regard to the second I mentioned in terms of the judge, we've had discussion in this committee a number of times of the way in which the county is working on establishing new software for the criminal justice system, and the need to figure out how to do that most efficiently. It would seem to be obvious on the face of it, but apparently it was not, so we will have to take make our choice. Mr. Feathering?
Mr. Chairman, since we had 3 denials here, requests for denials, isn't there a personal explanation from the auditor to come in and explain to these exactly why he's demanding this stuff?
That request has been made and there's been no response.
Has it been made in writing or no?
Yes.
It has been? Okay, thank you.
If there's no other discussion, this involves spending money, so we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Raymond? Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
All right, the Moody rating call, the results. Steve, you want to speak to that first?
Yeah, you got
Oh, wait a
monthly
minute, I'm
claims
sorry.
report first, Mr. Lear.
I skipped an item. Thank you. The monthly claims report. That's in your packet. Is there a motion to approve the monthly claims report? Mr. Hunter? Mr. Long seconds. Any questions, discussion on the monthly claims? They're all listed in your packet. If there are no questions or discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter?
Aye.
Mr. Raymond?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
Now we can move to the results of the Moody rating call. Mr. McCarty, you want to speak to that first?
Sure. Yeah, we received some positive news, very positive. We moved 2 more notches. So just a recap, in the last 2 years, we have moved 4 notches. So 2 notches a year ago, 2 notches this year. And according to our Moody's reviewer, that is unheard of. So congratulations, to Chairman Wheeler and Vice Chairman Sirois, the County Finance Committee and the County Board, all the elected and appointed and all the employees. Really, it's been truly an amazing change. I know the county put out a press release and showed some of the rating changes. So I won't go into that, but we were moved to BAA1. There is a graph showing what the rating identifications mean and where they're at. So we're 1 notch below A, and we have a positive outlook. So, the expected more positive change in the near future. So really good information. We did include the credit opinion with your kit, for reading purposes, an update. So very positive news, and we expect it to continue and get into the A in the near future.
Mr. Wheeler, could you share a little bit in terms of this?
I don't have a lot to add other than very positive comments by the person doing the rating from Moody's. They ask a lot of in-depth questions. This isn't just a kumbaya meeting. It's really what did you do? Why did you do it? What are you going to do? How did you deal with these challenges? What's your plan? What are the challenges upcoming? And they seemed, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, more than satisfied with those answers, because we actually were able to speak in specificity about those things. With the ICE situation, and then obviously with Champaign and everything else going on, we're still climbing And I would say that there's a lot of reasons for that, but it looks that it's going to be going on for the foreseeable future. The other side of it is there was an acknowledgement that we just didn't take ARPA money and plug up a bunch of holes, and this is like smoke and mirrors. This was happening before we received one dime. Granted, we're using ARPA money for things that we'd have to spend tax dollars on in the future, like squad cars and things like that. That will have a positive budgetary impact on us as we go forward the next few years, as we get into these new purchase patterns. But as it stands right now, it seems like we've got a good plan and we're executing it, and then we shift it when things change, like ice. Is that pretty accurate, Steve, is a summary?
Yeah, absolutely. I refer to it to others as like sitting in the principal's office, and the types of questions that they ask, they really dive into detail. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? As Chairman Wheeler acknowledged, and it makes you feel uncomfortable, because he does this all the time, this particular, reviewer, and, they try to read between the lines as much as they can, and where they can. And, our financial information is solid. The cash flow is the change in cash flow and borrowing is a huge factor as well. So, the proof is in the reports that we send them, as well as in our explanation, on how we're doing. So.
I will add that he was, I don't want to say flabbergasted, but he was definitely impressed that all of our debt, 75% of it's going to be paid off in 24. That's a big mark of, how much debt you're carrying and then capacity going forward. The taxpayers are going to see a big chunk of their property taxes fall off, maybe sooner than they think, but at least in 24. So it's nice to be able to tell that story, not as a victory lap, but it matters on how much we pay for our interest on everything we do. So yeah, I couldn't be happier.
Any other questions or comments on the results of this rating call? If not, we'll move on. And we'd move to the ARPA funding requests. The first of those is the Economic Alliance of Kankakee County. You see that request there, Mr. McCarty? You want to speak to that one?
Yeah, this is a request. We've attached the information for a housing study within the county. This will be lost revenue, not direct ARPA, just to make sure we're clear. That's kind of the summary on the first one. If there's any questions, Chairman Wheeler might know a little bit more detail about it.
As a member of the representative to the Economic Alliance, I know the Alliance has had presentations upon the need to have a clear understanding of housing in this county, and that this is an important part of moving forward economically. And so this is something that clearly is a major need that has been identified by the Alliance, and I would want to wholeheartedly support this one, because I think it has put its finger on something that's essential for county growth. Mr. Hunter.
I just wanted to reiterate the comments that you made, and I really do appreciate the presentation that Mr. Nugent, the CEO, has made before various organizations, providing us with a lot of specificity and trends, and we're speaking about the housing needs. It's amazing when we think in terms of CSL Bearing being one of the larger employers in the county, and the housing needs that are associated with those employees, as opposed to individuals working at CSL Bearing and having to live up in Frankfurt and so forth and other northern suburbs. We need to be able to identify what our needs are and act accordingly in terms of a developer to create more subdivisions and upper scale housing needs, $300,000-$400,000 homes, which are required by some of the employees who come from different parts of the region, country, to work at CSL Bearing. So I just move to approve.
I might add that there are housing needs at several levels of employment, and there are employers that would benefit from having their employees have residences within the county in addition to CSL bearing. So, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, he made the motion. I'll make the second, but I just let the committee know Mr. Nugent is here if they have questions or if he wants to speak on that, what the intent of the study is and what the scope of it is. I'm sure it's just not for Essex. It's probably countywide. So, not that Essex doesn't need his housing study. So,
Mr. Nugent, would you like to?
Yeah, as most of you said, we've been talking about this for several years as we go around to all the different local employers and find out the reasons why people commute here but don't live here. One of the things that continually comes up is the lack of housing. We want to do this study so we can justify our efforts to go out and try to find builders, the larger builders from the suburban areas, and try to attract them down here to do housing developments. As you all know, over the last 10, 15 years with housing being in decline, a lot of the people that used to build houses in the early 2000s when we were really busy, they've gone out of business, and we need more builders who have the ability to come in and do large projects, build gated communities, build communities that have amenities. Those are the type of things that we find that the employers want. People would love to live here and live close to where they work, rather than commuting from the south suburbs or from Indiana. And we want to turn them into not just commuters, we want to turn them into residents. We need a place for them to live. This is justification, hiring this company to come in, do a survey to tell us how many homes that we can build and support, so we can use that to attract the builders to come here and solve that issue.
All right, thank you. Other questions for Mr. Nugent? We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess? Aye. Ms. Weber? Aye. Ms. Parker? Aye. Mr. Fairfield? Aye. Mr. Featherling? Aye. Mr. Miller? Aye. Mr. Long? Aye. Mr. Hunter? Yes. Mr. Raymond? Aye. Mr. Wheeler? Aye. Motion carries.
The next request is from the Economic Development Association. It is.
This is for $49,000 and for parking lot repair. This will also be lost revenue, not direct ARPA, per the attached application.
Chairman Wheeler, maybe you could speak to this a little bit.
Sure. The EDA manages the Bradley Roper building, for lack of a better term, just to draw attention to the name. It's a bunch of businesses are in there. I wish I could tell you the number, but it's a lot of national and local manufacturers. Arctic Snow, Greif Brothers. It's right off of North Street. So the issue that we have is that we're devoting a lot of resources to addressing some old code stuff that needs to be addressed in there. We got some upgrades on the building, but at the same time, we've got a parking lot over there that the restaurant uses. I think it's Windy Hill is the name of it. Yeah, Windy Hill. It's got a good following, but then you also have Greif, and the trucks coming in and out of there have just torn up the parking lot. So much like the project that we authorized for Shoup down on the south side, this would be an economic development project, so the trucks can get in and out of there, and we're able to assist that business in letting traffic come in and out of there, because there's not a lot of foot traffic. People pull up in their car to go there. So that was the request, and I said, when I was talking with the EDA, said send it in. I think this is right up the alley of what we intend to do with the economic development type money, is to make it easier for folks to do business rather than to hinder these trucks coming in and out on the shipping and receiving side. So that's basically it. And I don't know if Tim has anything to add to that too. He's been part of those conversations as well. So
is there a motion on this? Motion to approve? Mr. Hunter, Mr. Featherling. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Ms. Weber? Aye. Ms. Parker? Aye. Mr. Fairfield? Aye. Mr. Featherling? Aye. Mr. Miller? Aye. Mr. Long? Aye. Mr. Hunter? Mr. Raymond? Aye. Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. McCarty will turn to the ARPA portion, the Turner Freight System.
Andy has something.
I'm sorry.
I just want to make clear, when we talk about lost revenue, these are all reimbursements, so they have to spend and then we reimburse, because that's the audit trail that we would have to have. We're just not giving money and then it can't go to something else. It has to be for these projects we're authorizing. I just want to mention that to the group.
A good point to make.
Yeah.
All right. Turner Freight System.
Yeah, the next one was an application from Turner Freight Systems LLC. This would be direct ARPA code 2.9 for small business reimbursement. Just a reminder, we have a cap fund of 10,000. This business address is within St. Anne, so it's a 50% reduction. This one is a little bit unique, not to specify, but they started a business right before COVID and got brought to a screeching halt. So we looked at 19, 20, and 21. The business is now producing, they did have a legitimate financial impact. So we feel, that it will cut, through all the audit procedures that, may come upon it. And so we feel that eligible funding of 5,000, recommend to the board for your approval, review and approval, if you agree.
Is there a motion to approve? Ms. Parker, a second. Mr. Fairfield. Any further discussion? Questions? Hearing none, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess? Ms. Weber? Ms. Parker? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Featherling? Mr. Miller? Mr. Long? Mr. Hunter? Mr. Raymond? Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
Limestone Township. Mr. McCarty.
Yes, Limestone Township. This would be a second application. We did the board set a cap for non-covered government of 20,000. The first funding was for 3,750. This one is for equipment. The remaining balance up to the cap would be 16,250. We will go for under reimbursement only on this and go up to the cap of 20,000. So the funding amount for the second request would be 16,250 if the board wants to do that.
Mr. Long moves to approve. Is there a second? Mr. Wheeler seconds. Any discussion? You've heard what it's for. It is spending money. A roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess? Ms. Weber? Ms. Parker? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Featherling? Mr. Miller? Mr. Long? Mr. Hunter? Mr. Raymond? Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
All right, we move on. Is there anything more you have, Mr. McCarty?
I do not, unless anybody has any other questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? Hearing none. Thank you, and we'll move to the Treasurer's Office. Mr. Africano, we have a copy of the County Treasurer's Report and the County Collector's Report. There is no resolution list for September. Is there a motion to approve the Treasurer and Collector's combine and approve? Mr. Featherling, second. Mr. Fairfield. All in favor of combining and approving, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And what do you have for us this morning?
Good morning. Just wanted to let you know.
Oh, just a minute. I got to turn you on. All right.
Thank you. We're distributing money today. So by the end of the day, all collected money will be distributed to all the taxing bodies. It was brought to my attention by the chairman this morning that there's been some grumbling out in the community that I waited as long as I did to distribute money, and I think it's important to say on the record that my responsibility is to distribute money within 30 days of the end of collection, and then every 30 days after. And in the past, that money was sent out fairly quickly because we were earning 0.1%, and there was no reason. I think as of today, we're at 1.76. So there's substantial interest being earned. And so we kept the money in Illinois funds for almost the 30 days. And so I would just caution any taxing bodies that when the conditions are right, we'll always wait the 30 days, and that everybody should plan their budgets accordingly. Having said that, we are at about 58% collection after the first due date, which is about where we've been in the last couple of years. So that's positive. Mobile home bills are out and being paid. Internet payments are roughly 10%. So that still continues to rise, which we like. And I brought a sheet by today because I think it's important. I know I mention it every year, and I probably will continue to say thank you to the banks. And if you look, you can see the money that's collected by the banks. I think 32 million for the first collection so far. So 32 out of roughly 105 million. So they do an amazing amount of work for us by collecting. And I would note again that PNC does not participate. And I have been very adamant and clear that I don't believe we should bank with them as they don't work with us. And so I've asked people in county government to move their money to banks that participate in helping us. And you can see here Midland, through their consolidation, is they took in 10 million for us. I mean, that's an amazing. We would have to hire several more staff to do what the banks do. And so I think it's always important to say thank you to them. And obviously it's a service for their customers as well. That may be the end. And I just want to say thank you to my staff, Shakira, Diana, Sarah, Shelley, Teresa. Thank you very much. It's always a tough time to, people aren't very happy when they're paying taxes, but they do a great job making everybody as happy as possible. Questions for me?
Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Chairman. Nick, what's the percentage of the people that are using your payment plan that you set up?
Oh, got percentage-wise, I'm not sure. I will get you that number, but near 1,000 people. We've had a lot of participation, and I'm gonna, we're gonna continue to press that and say, hey, split your tax payments up. It's so easy to do, and it doesn't require. I think everybody maybe knows this, but you can pay 100 one week, you can pay 200 the next, you can pay monthly, you can pay every other day. It doesn't matter. The rule is you have to have paid the amount you need to pay by first due date, and then by second. But it's worked for a lot of people. It's helped manage their tax payments. And I guess I just want to call out that I have a new report format that you probably can tell is new, and it just, especially during tax time, I think it's important to show you where all the money is. Illinois funds is where we invest, right? And that's I think that's run through U.S. Bank, but it's run through the state treasurer, and then the ePay account is essentially where all the internet payments come through, and tax collection is what First American takes in for us, and then tax operating is where it all gets dumped into. So that kind of give you a rundown of where our money's at. So today we will send out 105 million by the end of today. So everybody will be, all the taxing districts will be happy at the end of today. Should be.
Other questions? comments? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your report. We have made available a place on the agenda for the auditor, but I see no one in attendance representing that office, so we would move on to old business, new business, operating agreement with Metropolitan Planning Program and the Illinois Department of Transportation. Ben Wilson, would you speak to that? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is pretty standard year to year. With the permission of the committee, though, I did want to take maybe a couple minutes just to talk a little bit about what we're doing under the cooperating agreement and kind of what we've seen out of the bipartisan infrastructure law or the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Investment Act. We've received a bump in funding, which is pretty cool for us. Last year's agreement was about $325,000. We're at $376,000 for this year's agreement. So that's and that'll be a kind of recurring bump. We usually see 3 to 5% increase on that, but when we get a big act that comes through Congress, we usually see a larger bump in funding, and this allows us to do more planning exercises. The cooperating agreement that we receive is an 18-month agreement. It starts on July 1st. We actually have an executed agreement from IDOT. We're requesting permission today from the committee to move this through our process to allow Chairman Wheeler to sign it to make it official. Every agreement is 18 months, so we're kind of working under last year's agreement still, which is perfectly fine until we get this executed. The agreement requires us to maintain a few core documents, annual obligated projects list, something we call the UWP, which is a Unified Work Program, and all of this works through the CATS MPO, of which Chairman Wheeler sits on the board, the mayors of the urban area, and we do planning within the urban area. New for this year, we're very heavily invested in counting. We just purchased some new trail counters, though, so we're kind of doing a little bit of like less road, more pedestrian focused for this year. So we've got trail counters now at the state park. We've been working with the state park, Stacy Johnson out at the state park. We did some counts for them for July 4th weekend to see what the visitors looked like, and we've had a running count on their trail system just so that we would kind of talk within our greater regional system about what pedestrian traffic looks like while still focusing on the important surface transportation. So these funds all allow staff to manage these documents. We staff all of the meetings for the projects, and then we kind of put together and coordinate an additional stream of funding. We receive around $900,000 a year to do actual surface transportation. So we staff this up with this planning grant, and then we allow our board to make decisions on where we'll be investing in our future projects. So that's where, if you heard at the Highway Committee, that County Highway 9 from the bridge approach at bridge approach at 57 to 4552 will be improved. We'll be using those dollars. We at the staff level review all those projects and do all that, so that way the chairman and the other board members can make informed decisions about what's going on within the system.
Our questions, comments from the committee. You mentioned the state park and pedestrian.
Yeah, so the focus on pedestrian, we did state park really because we know 4th of July weekend's very heavily traveled through there. We have authorization from the Kankakee County Forest Preserve, Kankakee River Valley Park District, and Bourbonnais Township Park District to check all of our systems. So we'll be doing Riverfront Trail, Perry Farm, areas near the college. We're going to just be checking what our pedestrian travel looks like to see if there's any additional legs, because part of what we do is surface transportation for road, but we also review projects for Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program, which is additional funding for pedestrian travel. So we like to see we collect data and crunch it, and then we give the board members as much information they can to say where are the legs, where are the gaps, not just hey, there's a road that we need to do a sidewalk on, but like what would be the most informed decision we could make as a group.
Now, would that pick up bicyclists on Okay.
Yeah, so these are passive infrared sensors. We put them in a little electrical disconnect box, and anybody that breaks it, so we put them about hip high, so potentially we could catch deer, I guess, but no raccoons or anything like that. And anybody who passes it, it's just a beam break, and we get a count for every. And so you place them on a pole, so they don't point anywhere near a road. They just cover the trail, and we get an idea of where everybody is. And it's a pretty neat piece of tech. We can go out there and pull the information off of it, and then we map that and turn that over to our partner agencies, so that way they have. So the CVB will have the info, and the districts themselves will have the info where maybe they want to make future investments in their systems.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? A motion then to approve this agreement. Mr. Hunter, Mr. Featherling. Any other questions, comments on the motion to approve? Roll call vote.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hess? Ms. Weber? Ms. Parker? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Featherling? Mr. Miller? Mr. Long?
Aye.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Raymond? Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who has any other old business or new business to bring before the committee? Mr. Hess? Mr. Long seconds that motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.